Welcome, brothers and sisters on the path. There is a kind of wisdom that does not speak. There is a kind of strength that makes no sound. And in the space where no words are spoken, something profound begins to grow. In a world filled with noise, constant movement, voices, demands, we often forget that growth does not need to shout. It only needs space. And silence is that space. But holding space in silence is not the same as escaping the world. It is not isolation. It is a conscious practice, a discipline. It means sitting with yourself without judgment. It means breathing with your discomfort. And it means learning to listen, not just to the world outside, but to the quiet teacher within. When you hold space for silence, you begin to notice what usually goes unnoticed: the tension in your body, the rushing of your thoughts, the clinging to the past, the anxiety for the future. But stay long enough, and that noise within begins to settle. Like mud in water, it sinks, and then the water clears. Only then can you truly see. Only then can you truly grow. So I invite you, let silence be your mirror. Let it reflect what needs to be seen. Let it reveal the path, not through force, but through stillness. In the silence, you do not become less. You return to who you truly are. Thank you. In our modern lives, we often associate growth with movement, doing more, achieving more, speaking more. We are conditioned to believe that progress is always loud and visible, something we can measure and show to others. But this is only one part of the truth. There is another way, quieter, but just as powerful, where growth does not arise from doing, but from being. In this way, silence is not an absence. It is a space, a container within which something deeper begins to unfold. Silence, when held consciously, becomes sacred. It is not the silence of suppression or avoidance. It is not about retreating out of fear or hiding from the world. Instead, it is a deliberate space created through presence, through the act of simply being here, now, without the need to speak, fix, or explain. This space allows life to breathe. It makes room for insight to arise naturally, like a seed that sprouts not because we force it, but because the soil is fertile and undisturbed. In this sacred silence, the noise of the external world begins to lose its grip. We step out of the cycle of reaction and into a space of awareness. The silence becomes a mirror, not showing us how others see us, but how we actually are beneath the layers of identity and expectation. The more we sit in this stillness, the more we begin to recognize what is true and what is merely habit. We begin to see which thoughts arise out of fear, that is the number R, which emotions return again and again because we have never made space to fully feel them. What we discover in silence is often subtle. There are no dramatic revelations, no fireworks. Instead, there is spaciousness, a sense of openness in the body, a quiet observing presence in the mind. And in that spaciousness, transformation takes place. Just as the body knows how to heal itself when given rest, the mind and heart also know how to realign when we stop interfering. The silence becomes a kind of medicine, not curing us through force, but by allowing what is natural to re-emerge. This sacred space does not demand rituals or special settings. It can be created in a quiet room, during a walk alone, or even in the middle of a crowded world, so long as you hold the intention to be still and aware. It is not something you find outside of yourself. It is something you return to within. And each time you return, something inside becomes clearer, more rooted. The silence holds you not to keep you still forever, but to prepare you for movement that is conscious, grounded, and whole. We are taught from a young age how to speak, how to express ourselves, how to make our voices heard. But rarely are we taught how to truly listen. And when we do listen, it is often only with half of our attention. Our ears may be open, but our minds are busy preparing a reply, forming judgments, or drifting elsewhere. Yet listening, in its truest form, is not just about receiving sound. It is an inward act, a quiet discipline that requires us to soften, to open, and to let go of the need to respond. When we enter silence and begin to hold space within it, something interesting happens. We start to hear what is usually drowned out by our busy lives. We hear the quiet voice inside us, the one that does not shout but waits patiently. It may speak through emotions, through subtle sensations in the body, or through a feeling of knowing that we cannot quite explain. This kind of listening is not limited to the ears. It is a full body experience where awareness becomes the instrument. To listen beyond words means to notice what is present beneath the surface. A thought may appear, but what feeling gave rise to it? A memory may emerge, but what longing or fear lies beneath it? This kind of inner listening requires patience and trust. It asks us to sit with what arises without trying to label it right or wrong. It requires a kind of humility to accept that we do not always know ourselves as well as we think we do. And in that humility, we find the space to grow. The world also speaks in silence. The rustling of leaves, the rhythm of breath, the pause between heartbeats. These are languages too. And when we slow down enough to listen to them, we begin to experience connection on a deeper level. The boundaries between self and others start to soften. We become aware of the subtle ways in which everything is communicating, not through speech, but through presence. Listening becomes a bridge, not just to understanding others, but to remembering our place in the larger whole. This form of deep listening cannot be forced. It is not about trying to extract meaning, but about receiving what is already there. Often, the more we try to grasp it, the more it slips away. But if we are still, truly still, and we simply allow ourselves to be receptive, then the silence begins to speak, not with words, but with clarity, not with noise, but with truth. And in that quiet, we begin to hear not just the voice inside, but the wisdom that has been patiently waiting to be heard all along. When we first step into silence, it is rarely peaceful. The initial experience can be unsettling, even painful. Without the usual distractions, we come face to face with ourselves, our restless minds, our aching hearts, the tension stored in our bodies. Many turn away at this point, believing something is wrong. But this discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is the beginning of seeing clearly. And to grow through silence, we must be willing to stay with what arises, even when it is uncomfortable. Discomfort reveals what we have been avoiding. It shines a light on the parts of ourselves we have pushed aside, hoping they would disappear on their own. Old memories, unmet emotions, unresolved fears, they rise to the surface, not to punish us, but to be acknowledged. The silence does not create these things, it only exposes them. And in doing so, it offers us a choice to run or to turn toward them with openness. If we choose the latter, something begins to shift inside us. Meeting discomfort without resistance is not weakness, it is courage. It is the strength to sit with your own anger without exploding, to feel sadness without trying to distract yourself, to observe fear without needing to act on it. This is the inner training. And it is not easy because we live in a world that encourages us to numb and escape. But in silence, there is no escape, only the opportunity to soften and to see what lies beneath the surface reactions. When we allow discomfort to speak, it often has something important to say. Beneath the agitation may be a longing for love. Beneath the frustration may be an unmet need. Beneath the fear may be a deep desire to be free. These emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. But they speak in a language we can only hear when we stop pushing them away. In silence, we give them the space to unfold. And in doing so, we reclaim parts of ourselves we had forgotten or rejected. This is the alchemy of discomfort. When we stop resisting it, it becomes a path. Not a path that moves quickly or promises comfort, but one that leads inward, toward understanding, toward healing, toward a deeper sense of wholeness. We do not need to force the pain to go away. We simply need to sit with it, breathe with it, and let it teach us what it came to reveal. In this way, discomfort becomes not something to avoid, but a silent teacher walking beside us, patient and wise. Stillness is often misunderstood. To many, it appears passive, even lifeless, something reserved for moments of pause between activity. But true stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of depth. It is a conscious returning to what is steady, what is unchanging, even as life continues to flow all around. And it is within this stillness that transformation becomes possible. Not through force or effort, but through clarity and presence. In silence and stillness, the mind begins to settle. The racing thoughts, the looping worries, the internal noise, all of it starts to slow down. At first, it may feel chaotic, as if the noise gets louder when we stop running. But this is only because we are finally allowing ourselves to hear it. When we remain present, when we do not resist, the surface disturbances begin to sink. What remains is the deeper current, the part of us that watches without judgment, the still awareness that has always been there. This stillness is not something we create, it is something we return to. It is already within us, like the quiet depths beneath the waves. But to access it, we must stop stirring the surface. We must step back from constant stimulation and allow ourselves to rest, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. In this resting, the body begins to repair itself, the breath slows, and the mind becomes a clearer space. And it is in this spacious clarity that insight arises, naturally, without force. Transformation is often imagined as dramatic, like a sudden breakthrough or a grand realization. But real transformation is subtle. It is the shift in how we respond, the way we begin to choose differently without knowing why. It is the quiet dropping of old patterns, like leaves falling from a tree when the season changes. In stillness, we align with something deeper than our preferences or habits. We begin to act from presence rather than reaction. And this shift, though invisible to the outside world, changes everything. Stillness gives us time to integrate. So much of our growth is not about learning more, but about remembering what we already know. Stillness helps us digest our experiences, process our emotions, and make sense of our journey. It becomes the ground where scattered parts come together and form something whole. There is no rush in this process. Like a tree growing slowly in silence, our roots deepen beneath the surface, unseen but essential. And from these roots, something new begins to emerge quietly, steadily, and with great strength.